Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. And like I told you in the last video where I showed you some books from my ongoing Princeton University Hall set of books that I bought all the way back in February, this is the last set. So I've shown you 12 at a time, and I got 36 books, and this is the last set of 12. So I just want to jump right into it and start telling you about them. Like I also said in the last video, some of these things, other than the fact that I am interested in the topic, don't know much about the specific arguments that the books are making, so I sort of lean into the ad matter you can find on the Princeton University Press website about the books. So I'll just be sort of reading that to you. If you're interested, you can let me know and do your own research. But as always, if you are interested in anything, let me know. Or if you've read any of these, let me know. Or if you are interested in hearing me talk about any of these, also drop me a comment. I love to hear from everyone. All right, the first book. This is a book a few people have read for Historathon and other events. I think Vin from Revenant Reads read this. This is The Man of the Crowd, Edgar Allan Poe and the City by Scott Peoples. Edgar Allan Poe changed residences about once a year throughout his life. Driven by a desire for literary success and the pressures of supporting his family, Poe sought work in American magazines, living in the cities that produced them. Scott Peoples chronicles Poe's rootless life in the cities, neighborhoods, and rooms where he lived and worked, exploring how each new place left its enduring mark on the writer and his craft. I have a growing spate of Machiavelli books that one of these days I'm going to use Historathon as an excuse to just sit down and read them all and do sort of a mini Machiavelli project. I probably have 8 or 10 or 12 of them. Just sit down and read the Florentine histories and the Discorsi and a couple of biographies I have and everything. And here's one more to add to the Nicolo Makavelli pile. This is Nicolo Makavelli, subtitle, An Intellectual Biography by Corrado Vivanti. This is a colorful, comprehensive, and authoritative introduction to the life and work of the Florentine statesman, writer, and political philosopher Nicolo Machiavelli. Corrado Vivanti, who is one of the world's leading Machiavelli scholars, provides an unparalleled intellectual biography that demonstrates the close connections between Machiavelli's thought and his changing fortunes during the tumultuous Florentine Republic and his subsequent exile. Vivanti's concise account covers not only Machiavelli's most famous works, The Prince, the Discorsi, the Florentine Histories, The Art of War, but also his poetry, letters, and comic dramas. While setting Machiavelli's life against a dramatic backdrop of war, crisis, and diplomatic intrigue, the book also paints a vivid human portrait of the man. So one more for the Machiavelli project. One of these days, Historathon 2051 maybe. I am just starting out on a book on the Enlightenment right now that I'm reading with a few other people who are participating in Historathon. We have you probably know about the Historathon Discord, but we're talking about me and 3 or 4 other people could be reading the Robertson book on the Enlightenment, The Pursuit of Happiness. I think it's 1680 to 1790, something like that. It's the big 1,000 page one. And here's a very short book on the Enlightenment This is The Enlightenment History of an Idea by Vincenzo Ferrone, I think. In this concise and powerful book, one of the world's leading historians of the Enlightenment provides a bracing and clarifying new interpretation of this watershed period. Arguing that philosophical and historical interpretations of the era have long been hopelessly confused, Vincenzo Ferrone makes the case that it's only by separating these views and taking an approach grounded in social and cultural history that we can begin to grasp what the Enlightenment really was and why it's still relevant today. Ferrone explains why the Enlightenment was a profound and wide-ranging cultural revolution that reshaped Western identity, reformed politics through the invention of human rights, and refined knowledge by creating a critical culture. Sounds like it's going to have a lot of dovetailing with the book I'm in the middle of now. Hey. Something related, I guess, to probably the Enlightenment is in here somewhere. But if you write a history of liberalism, I'm sure the Enlightenment has to be in here. At least a bit. The Lost History of Liberalism, from Ancient Rome to the 21st Century by Helena Rosenblatt. The Lost History of Liberalism challenges our most basic assumptions about a political creed that has become a rallying cry and a term of derision in today's increasingly divided public square. Taking readers from ancient Rome to today, Helena Rosenblatt traces the evolution of the words liberal and liberalism, revealing the heated debates that have taken place over their meaning. She debunks the popular myth of liberalism as a uniquely Anglo-American tradition and shows how it was only during the Cold War that it was refashioned into an American ideology focused on individual freedoms. This timely and provocative book sets the record straight on a core tenet of today's political conversation, laying the foundations for a more constructive discussion about the future of liberal democracy. The Lost History of Liberalism by Helena Rosenblatt. So I think I found this book when I was searching under the philosophy tab, maybe the politics tab, I don't know. And this came up. It's a pretty short history of social philosophy and, well, social thought, as the title tells you. It's war in social thought. Hobbes to the Present by Hans Joas and Wolfgang Nobel. This book, the first of its kind, of course, provides a sweeping critical history of social theories about war and peace, from Hobbes to the present. Distinguished social theorist Hans Joas and Wolfgang Nobel present both a broad intellectual history and an original argument as they trace the development of thinking about war over more than 350 years, from the pre-modern era to the period of German idealism and the Scottish and French Enlightenments, and then from the birth of sociology in the 19th century through the 20th century. While focusing on social thought, the book draws on many disciplines, including philosophy, anthropology, and political science. And that's one of the things that really drew me to it. It looked really interdisciplinary, and I love that. So let's see. More zone books. I have at least 3, maybe one more. This is from a small little collection they have about the ancient world. They have a couple of books. Actually, both of these books are by the same writer, Nicolo Makavelli. This is called the Invention of Athens. The funeral orations in the classical city. The funeral oration in the classical city. Zone book. You can tell they sort of all have that same appearance. Author Nicolo. How does the funeral oration relate to democracy in ancient Greece? How did the death of an individual citizen soldier become an occasion to praise the city of Athens? In the Invention of Athens, Nicolo traces the different rhetoric, politics, and ideology of funeral orations from Thucydides, Gorgias, Lysias, and Demosthenes to Plato. So, doesn't give a lot of information or really make a summary of her argument. I've dipped into this, and the writing it's thick. it's some academies going on, but I'll read it one of these days. I do love Zone books for their courage to publish important things, but that aren't necessarily easy to read. And the second book by Nicolo is The Divided City, on memory and forgetting in ancient Athens. This one has a much more fleshed out description. Athens, 403 BCE. The end of the bloody oligarchic dictatorship of the 30. The Democrats returned to the city victorious. Renouncing vengeance and active amnesia, citizens call for, if not invent, amnesty. They agree to forget the unforgettable, the past misfortunes, quote-unquote, of civil strife. More precisely, what must be denied is that stasis, simultaneously partisanship, faction, and sedition, is at the heart of Greek politics. The crucial moment of Athenian political history, Nicolo argues in The Divided City, must be interpreted as constitutive of, and not a threat to, political life and politics itself. Divided within and against itself, the city is formed by that which it refuses. Conflict, the calamity of civil war, is the other dark side of the beautiful unitary city of Athens. Beneath the Greek city, erected in totality and ideality, you see what I'm talking about with her writing? And this isn't written, of course, by her, but someone writing for the press. Leroux rediscovers the discord affecting the entire city, the stasis manifesting the fundamental conflictual ambivalence of the civic order. The city, by definition, quote, is doomed to divide itself in two. In a brilliant analysis of the Greek word for voting, diaphora, Leroux underscores the conflictual and dynamic motion of democratic life. Voting appears as the process of dividing up, of disagreement, in short, of agreeing to divide up and choose between. Not only does Leroux reconceptualize the definition of ancient Greek democracy, but she ultimately allows the contemporary reader to rethink the functioning of modern democracies in its critical moments of dissension and divide, of internal stasis. So, if I can muster the courage to to deal with the academies, we will see how this goes. This is a book that Princeton University Press has at least 2 or 3 books by, and writes on some really, really interesting set of topics. This is by Duncan Bell, who is at the University of Cambridge, teaches political science there. This is Dream Worlds of Race, Empire and the Utopian Destiny of Anglo-America. Between the late 19th century and the First World War, an ocean-spanning network of prominent individuals advocated the unification of Britain and the United States. They dreamt of the final consolidation of the Anglo world. Scholars, journalists, politicians, businessmen, and science fiction writers invested the Anglo-Saxons with extraordinary power. The most ambitious hailed them as a people destined to bring a peace and justice to the earth. More modest visions still imagined them as likely to shape the 20th century. Dreamworlds of Race explores this remarkable moment in the intellectual history of racial domination, political utopianism, and world order. Focusing on a quartet of extraordinary figures, Andrew Carnegie, W.T. Stead, Cecil J. Rhodes, and H.G. Wells, Duncan Bell shows how unionists on both sides of the Atlantic reimagined citizenship, empire, patriotism, race, war, and peace in their quest to secure global supremacy. Yet, even as they dreamt of an Anglo-dominated world, the Unionists disagreed over the meaning of race, the legitimacy of imperialism, the nature of political belonging, and the ultimate form and purpose of unification. The racial dream world was an object of competing claims and fantasies. Exploring speculative fiction, as well as more conventional forms of political writing, Bell reads Unionist arguments as expressions of the utopianism circulated through into the 19th century Anglo-American culture, and juxtaposes them with Pan-Africanist critiques of racial domination and late 20th century fictional narratives of Anglo-American empire. Fascinating topic. I'm forgetting the other book I have by him from Princeton. It is on a similarly related topic. Okay, so 4 more books. This is by another author I have a couple of books by. Namely, I really want to read Three Somethings Make a Wall, Three Stones Make a Wall. That's not right. I could really look this stuff up before I start yammering, but it is basically kind of a history of archaeology, his participation in it, and some of the most important archaeological work that's been done over the years. This is another book, also by Eric Klein, called Digging Up Armageddon, The Search for the Lost City of Solomon. In 1925, Henry Breasted, the famous Egyptologist and director of the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago, sent a team of archaeologists to the Holy Land to excavate the ancient city of Megiddo, which was called Armageddon in the New Testament, which the Bible says was fortified by King Solomon. Their excavations made headlines around the world and shed light on one of the most legendary cities of biblical times, yet little has been written about what happened behind the scenes. Digging Up Armageddon brings to life one of the most important archaeological expeditions ever undertaken, describing the site and what was found there, including discoveries of gold and ivory, and providing an up-close look at the internal workings of a dig in the early years of biblical archaeology. The Chicago team left behind a trove of writings and correspondence spanning more than 3 decades, from letters and cablegrams to cards, notes, and diaries. Eric Klein draws on these materials to paint a compelling portrait of a bygone age of archaeology. He masterfully sets the expedition against the backdrop of the Great Depression in America and the growing troubles and tensions in British Mandate Palestine. He gives readers an insider's perspective on the debates over what was uncovered in Megiddo, the infighting that roiled the expedition, and the stunning discoveries that transformed our understanding of the ancient world. So more archaeological history. Something I love. When I used to do more reading 20 years ago in philosophy, I would read a lot of the history of science. And this is a name that always would come up, and you could find him in a library, a well-stocked academic library if you looked hard enough. But going to a bookstore and finding it, that was just not going to happen. And of course, Zone Books, leave it to Zone Books to translate one of his books. Really appreciate this. He was, I want to say French, maybe Belgian, a philosopher, mostly known for his contributions to the philosophy of science, and his name is Georges Conguelme. Might be slightly mispronouncing. It's not a name you hear every day, but if you read 20th century sort of philosophy of science, it's a name you certainly see on a regular basis. This is his book, The Normal and the Pathological, with an introduction by Michel Foucault, also put out by his own books. The Normal and the Pathological is one of the crucial contributions to the history of science in the last half century. When did this come out? Le Normal et le Pathologique, 1966. So, it takes as its starting point the sudden appearance of biology as a science in the 19th century and examines the conditions determining its particular makeup. Conguelme analyzes the radically new way in which health and disease were defined in the early 19th century, showing that the emerging categories of the normal and the pathological were far from objective scientific concepts. He demonstrates how the epistemological foundations of modern biology and medicine were intertwined with political, economic, and technological imperatives. Conguelme was an important influence on the thought of Michel Foucault and Louis Althusser, the Marxist writer, among others, in particular for the way in which he poses the problem of how new domains of knowledge come into being and how they are part of a discontinuous history of human thought. So, some history of science from the middle of the 20th century. Some more 20th century stuff. Sheila Fitzpatrick, if you're interested in Russian history. History of, say, the Bolsheviks through through the fall of communism. I think she wrote a short history of the Russian Revolution, or a book like that, similar title. She recently came out with a book called On Stalin's Team, The Years of Living Dangerously in Soviet Politics. Boy, is that the case. By Sheila Fitzpatrick. Stalin was the unchallenged dictator of the Soviet Union for so long that most historians have dismissed the officials surrounding him as mere yes-men and political window dressing. On Stalin's Team overturns this view, revealing that behind Stalin was a group of loyal men who formed a remarkably effective team with him from the late 1920s until his death in 1953. Drawing on extensive original research, Sheila Fitzpatrick provides the first in-depth account, not only account of this inner circle and their families. She vividly describes how these dedicated comrades in arms not only worked closely with Stalin, but also contributed to his social circle. Stalin's team included the wily security chief Beria Andreev, who traveled to provincial purges while listening to Beethoven on a portable gramophone, and Khrushchev, who finally disbanded the team 4 years after Stalin's death. Taking readers from the cataclysms of the Great Purges and World War II to the paranoia of Stalin's final years, On Stalin's Team paints an entirely new picture of Stalin within his milieu, one that transforms our understanding of how the Soviet Union was ruled during much of its existence. And one last book. In that first, well, I guess maybe there was one or two in the second installment too, but art history is something I don't talk enough about on this channel either, but it is another kind of history writing that I love. And it doesn't often get a lot of advertisement because of how specialist driven it can be, and this looks right up my alley. I hope I know enough art history to be able to appreciate it fully, but this is a history of art history by Christopher S. Wood. And from what I understand, this kind of looks at the history of how art concepts have been written about and thought about. We're going all the way back to historiographies of art in ancient China, the excavation of Etruscan vases in Arezzo, Byzantine iconography, just a whole bunch of stuff. In this authoritative book, the first of its kind in English, because of course it is, Christopher S. Wood tracks the evolution of the historical study of art from the late Middle Ages through the rise of the modern scholarly discipline of art history. Synthesizing and assessing a vast array of writings, episodes, and personalities, this original and accessible account of the development of art historical thinking will appeal to readers both inside and outside the discipline. Combining erudition with clarity, this book makes a landmark contribution to the understanding of art history. You notice how some of these descriptions don't exactly tell you what the thesis is, or what the sort of overriding claim of the book is. Maybe there's not one. Maybe this is just a sort of a train of ideas of art history through time without a thesis. But I really appreciate when, if anyone at Princeton happens to be watching, when there is sort of an idea of what the book is trying to present, instead of just more roundabout description of the topic. But a fascinating book, at least conceptually, and something I want to read more about. It also looks like it, works in a lot of sort of art theorists, art historians that I don't know about, because while I'm interested in it, I could certainly be more familiar than I am. Also, I saw Heidegger's name a few times, so it might have some philosophy in it too. Maybe next year for Historathon I'll subject everyone to some art history. That is the end of the Princeton books. It took long enough, but here we are. If any of this interests you, looks good, or if you've read any of it, like I said at the top of the video, let me know. Leave me a comment. I love to hear from everyone, and I will see you soon with more bookish content. Bye.